Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Director's Commentary on Wolfpack Hustle. I'll keep this short. It's really good to see you. I'm so glad you are watching these and I hope you're enjoying them. That being said, let's dive right into it. Thanks. Okay, so I'm actually really behind. I got confused. So this is Chapter 5. I thought I had already recorded Chapter 5, but I was mistaken. So this one is Chapter 5. Thank you all for dealing with my erratic nature of releasing episodes 6 and 7 before 5, but here we are.
Computer never shuts down. You know, when you're a basketball coach, you got so much stuff to think about. You have to think about these kids and their academics, how they're doing socially.
So a coach is talking about here about his computer never shutting down or whatever.
I'm always trying to figure out the next step.
He kind of has this mentality, as well as I think a lot of coaches do, and I have it as well, where we're just constantly thinking about stuff as it pertains to job responsibilities, personal responsibilities. There doesn't really feel like we can have a break during a demanding part of our lives, demanding part of our year. So yeah, Coach Keats is one of those people that will be awake until 2 or 3 in the morning, looking at film or whatever, and then get up the next morning and then start all over again. I get that way sometimes too when I get an idea in my head or I'm trying to think about something, fix something, get better at something. I feel like some of us can kind of relate to that about the busyness of your brain, thinking about what you need to do in order to get better at something, in order to not let people down, in order to take responsibility and improve. So yeah, not unique to coaches. Coaches are
I think guys are starting.
Or rare, successful coaches are a rare breed when it comes to that.
Different lineups in our 13 games. I think we're understanding how
Feeling the responsibility of trying to make things better,
we need to be a very good defensive team.
even if there's a struggle sometimes. Like the mentality is still there, the belief is still there. So yeah, with this episode, with this chapter, sorry, I keep calling them episodes. I refer to these as chapters for this particular show. First ACC episode of the existence of this show, in the existence of this show.
As I know, it'll be a tough January and February, but not just for us, for everybody.
Which, thinking back, is fun to think about, because when I started doing these documentaries, it was the first time with men's basketball that I got to travel to every game they went to, starting in December of every year. Didn't used to do that, and so it's really cool to try and like just experience what life is like on the road. And film in different stadiums. It's really cool to experience something. So this is, I brought it up in a previous episode, but that is the positive and negative board where Thomas Carr, Director of Operations, talking about what it means. If you do something bad, you get a negative point. If you do something positive, a positive point. And if you end up with more negatives at the end of practice than positives, then you run that many suicides.
Different things of that nature.
Pretty good motivational technique.
And if you're not doing those things, like I mentioned, you'll get a negative. And so at the end of practice, if your negatives outweigh your positives, then...
So Thomas Carr was responsible for, his role as the Director of Operations. So the duties assigned to him were to make sure everything runs efficiently. Oh, there's Coach Johnson getting some negatives.
Hargrave, he came back his first year from Marshall. Came back to Hargrave, went there and worked out for the team.
So Thomas is another
was there from
another one of those folks
2003
that
to
has a
2004,
background
so
with
that year
Coach
there.
Keats prior to him ending up at NC State. He's a player for him, worked on his staff as well, and then he ended up at NC State as director of ops.
And then have a passion for really helping kids, either get opportunities or see their value.
You're
they otherwise
during
wouldn't be able to do or see on their own.
in my years of doing documentaries,
Coach is
I've worked on a fair amount of basketball projects, and
or,
one thing that you can never bet on is the background of someone who wants to work in
13, 14 years.
athletics or work in basketball. They all come from some kind of different background. They could have been a player that wants to be a coach. They could end up being just loving the game and end up being a manager that wants to be a coach, or not even a coach. They just want to work on a staff and be good at their job, but at their particular task. So it's kind of neat to meet all kinds of different people when working on
not as good as you can be. This is my expectation.
documentaries like this. You just run into a lot of different people. It's pretty cool.
It's something that I've learned a lot about in terms of how to run a program. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to become a head coach somewhere along the way. In terms of always having been an assistant, didn't realize.
So one of the funny things is that if I am
a program, and so
if I'm featuring someone in a support staff role on the show, and I don't necessarily mic them up during a practice or anything like that, I'm still filming them because that's what I need footage of. But the players and the other coaches, they see me pointing the camera at whoever it is, and they think that that person's mic'd up. So they immediately just start giving them shit. They'll start cracking jokes to try to embarrass them. They'll give them a cold shoulder because they don't want to be recorded. It's kind of cool. It's funny the reactions we get when the players or coaches think somebody in their group is mic'd up. They act a little different.
Because that's, in my opinion, that's what builds a good culture.
So this episode was made this episode came out on New Year's Eve of 2017, and the episode prior to that came out on Christmas Eve of 2017. And as someone who makes this show, yes, I have to work over the holidays. My team and I have to work over the holidays, especially if there are games. Usually there's like a game a couple days before Christmas, and then a break until a couple days before New Year's. And so
I'm hard on myself just because I know
it's kind of weird going somewhere, not even going away to another school, but just working in athletics around these offices during the holidays. Like, no one is there except for the team, the coaches, and me, and whatever assistants I happen to have for that week. And it's really kind of dead and quiet, but at the same time it can be kind of peaceful, especially if you're editing somewhere in a building or a room that is normally packed. During the holidays, I get maybe 3 total days for Christmas, and that's it. And so I have to try and produce this episode, or holiday episodes, with a limited amount of time, because I don't want to work on Christmas. Who wants to work on Christmas? So a number of days almost we have to put together a show, or the burden we put on ourselves to create a show in a shorter amount of time is evident.
Way better than what I was able to show, and for all the schools and even
and so yeah, it's like trying to get a work-life balance while working over the holidays is very much a challenge in athletics. And if you have a understanding partner like I do, it makes it a little bit easier. So this is Alaric Freeman, graduate transfer. The year prior, as you saw from that B-roll, he was in the NCAA tournament. with
that
Baylor.
for 3 years. Not
So
really
it's kind of
knowing,
cool
you
for
know,
Coach
all of
Keats
that,
to get
all that I know I can do, but a lot of
a
coaches
guy like him on the team who has
in
that
high school that got
NCAA tournament
different
experience.
jobs, different schools, different coaches, they still remember me and they still, you know, believe that I could
I mean,
go out there and do it. And,
there are
Coach
other players on
Johnson
the team who
here,
have that
Coach
experience
Fiddle
too.
here,
But at this
Coach
point,
Keats,
NC State had not been to the NCAA tournament, I think,
that's
in
why, you know, they let me do it.
two or 3 years. And so having as many experienced guys on the team as possible is always beneficial.
I have a almost 3-year-old daughter, so you know when I play, I think about her.
So this was another attempt at trying to
3 years ago,
dive deeper into a player's personal history and a personal background. I'm talking about Al having a young daughter and
you know, when I was 17,
trying to be a father and be a role model. And if I really wish I had enough forethought to think about the storylines that would come out while conducting these interviews. I try to do my best in planning ahead, at least as far as who I want to cover, but the why doesn't really become evident until maybe the week before. And so I always kind of kick myself like, man, it would have been great to know if his daughter was at a game and I could have, you know, just gotten a shot of her or something, or at least asked for some pictures to try and include in this feature, if Al was comfortable with that. And you know, I failed to do that. I failed to do that a number of times, and I think the reasoning is probably just with time constraints, not as an excuse, but trying to juggle everything, things slip through the cracks, and I wish they didn't. But that's the nature of this particular show.
Thomas, get somebody to chart deflections for every kid today. Practice. Yeah. You know, I think
So Coach Keats
you know,
assigning assigning the support staff
3 or 4
some different roles.
scout reports because you know they didn't do such a great job picking them up.
For support staff members who are not technically entitled or technically have coach in their name, he'll give them some other responsibilities, like what they're asking Thomas to chart the number of the deflections that each player has.
You have to start with a sense of urgency, like
I can't thank y'all enough for checking out this episode of Director's Commentary. If you are enjoying what you are watching and you want to help support some of the stuff that I'm making, I would deeply, deeply be humbled if you considered becoming a patron. You can check out the Patreon link in the description below. Becoming a patron comes with all kinds of cool perks, and it helps me make more stuff, both in quality and in quantity, and it really would just mean the world to me. Okay, please resume watching.
very good job. Very good job with your hand.
I wonder how difficult it is to keep an eye on individuals during a practice.
TD did a good job coming on the
With
speed.
basketball, your numbers are limited, so it might be a little bit easier, but
Coming big. All right, let's go. Get a number.
man, for a football team,
If the guy is denying
having to
him
keep an
that
eye
much,
on every single person to see what they're doing well and what they're doing poorly and how they can improve, and trying to give
How about doing this? Take him. Come on, Al.
the
Come on,
proper
Al. Come
amount
on,
of motivation
Come on,
and
Al.
feedback
Come on, Al. Come
with
on. Bam,
the number
bam,
of folks you are
Come on,
kind
Al.
of responsible for.
Come on, he's just
I imagine it'd be
full
kind of
deny.
difficult.
You
but I'm not a
you gotta
coach.
guys you gotta be able to
It might be
adjust
second
and
nature to
take
them at
away
this
one of
point.
your options. Right now, if I tell you run something, you run exactly that play. They take an option away, you got to be able to go to the second option.
So some of these clips are a lot longer than I would normally put in a mic'd up segment, but I never want to
Good job.
abruptly
son.
cut
Hey,
off anyone.
Hey, hold on, TD.
And so
Let's
if
run today. Come on, guys. Come on.
we've got
Go back.
if somebody's in the flow of talking, or if somebody's in the flow of just speaking or giving feedback or action, like, I'm going to let it play out. And sometimes a clip I put in there is like 90 seconds long. Like, it's one shot that's 90 seconds long, but sometimes 2 minutes. And sometimes it's kind of cool when I look at my timeline of footage that I have laid out, and I see how long the clips are. I'm like, oh wow, I put that in there. Can I break that up at all? And I look at it, I'm like, no, it's actually really important. That's always kind of cool to witness how long these moments can be, and how long something can go on without being stale.
Deflections in a practice. Okay, we got to get back to being who we are, and right now we're averaging 40 deflections a game. And when you look at it, we've lost 3 games, but those 3 games we didn't get to our 40, so that's why we're at 30. I'm sorry, we're at 35 deflections a game because obviously in our 13 games we got to get to over 40. When we
mentioned this in a previous out of order episode. But the way Coach Keats and his staff, they keep track of numbers, and they try to make they try to create attainable goals for the players with numbers. So we need X amount of deflections, we need X amount of steals, we need X amount of rebounds. Like focusing on those numbers can lead to victories. I think that's kind of cool. If not, at least it can be kind of a building block to then get more victories down the road.
Take pride in getting stopped, and I want you to play bully ball. Let's play bully ball. All right, let's go.
So yeah, we are in Clemson for the first ACC game of the 2017 season, first road game, ACC game for me, for my for Wolfpack Hustle. I do not remember how many cameras we have for this trip, because it was over a holiday. Now, it is important to me. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but when a game is close, I think it's important to showcase highlights from both teams, because that shows how close it is. Like, I don't want to show 6 highlights from NC State and then at a timeout or a halftime or a score break, it says that the game is tied. Like, that makes 0 sense. Like, the viewer has no context as to how we ended up in a tie or how the game ended up so close when all they saw was one team playing well. And so I think that's important. As much as fans probably don't want to see another team, NC State fans probably don't want to see another team do well, I understand that, but my job is to tell the story. And the story is, if it's a close game, I'm going to showcase that it was a close game. Oh, that was kind of clutch. Must be just one camera.
That's what it is. It's a great fight. But if you take away your breakdown,
Yeah, because I'm using a lot of the game feed from the version that is on TV. That's kind of tough. Just cutting back and forth between one camera and a TV, the copy of the TV game. It's not ideal, but you gotta work with what you got.
Because they're keeping the ball alive. Well, if you guys want to win the game, which I know you do, you gotta play every possession. You can't play one possession and then decide that you're gonna rest a little bit. You're hurting the team. There's a skip. 3 by Mitchell. Rims in.
So judging by kind of a little music change going on here, introducing a fair amount of slow-mo, and then showing some more Clemson highlights. I don't think NC State wins this game, but yep. And so what I probably did there is, as I've kind of mentioned before, the way I edit the show, the last game segment in an episode is usually the last thing that I cut together. Because depends on, it kind of depends on how the games go, but for me, it's the least important part, because I'm just cutting together highlights, and highlights exist anywhere. Anybody can find highlights. So it's, for me, I'm working my hardest to provide context to what happens around the game. That way the game has meaning outside of a win or a loss. Like,
aggravated as fans, which is
what does it
right,
mean
and I love
for
it.
the program as a whole, or what does it mean for a particular player?
At a performance, when in reality,
And so when things don't go
there
well,
might be something else behind that besides they just didn't
like
play
this
well.
game where I think State lost, I was like 16 or
At-
something
I
like that.
think at this level, and I'm
You know,
learning
I don't want to
that
show
also
a long game of that, because nobody would find that,
these guys are a lot
nobody on
closer.
in the NC State fandom would find that
They've
interesting or
realized
even like
what
that.
there's certain
So
sacrifices and things
you
that
want
they
to
have to overcome
showcase
on their
if
own
the team is
in order
working
to
hard,
develop
if
their
they're playing
pride.
hard.
That's where I think
You also want to showcase maybe some shortcomings that the team is aware of that they need to work on.
the path that
Nothing
coach has
sneaky or
been
secret.
on,
It's
I
just
think, has a
obvious
lot to
things
do
that
with his ability
you
to
would
relate to
understand.
not only players, but people.
Or the impact that a loss or a win might have on a team or players.
There's instant credibility
That's
behind his name. He
something a lot of
created
folks
value,
don't really
not
keep in
only
mind
his
when they're
body
just
of work,
watching a
but
game.
being the type of person he is,
They're not
where
really thinking about
I
the
played
impact that the win or the loss would have on the
before,
people participating in the
the
game.
same
And I
guy
think there's that
right
disconnect
now,
there. And I think we need to
as he
think
was
more
back then.
about
Same values, same
that,
morals,
because then we
same
can kind of
expectations. So to
become
me,
not
it's just
so
shown me that
distant
I
ourselves
can
from a
be
win or
who I
loss.
am,
We can be
especially if I'm
connected
living
to
right,
those
doing
involved
right,
with the
acting
game and
right,
understand how much it means
eventually,
to them. And that way, when it is a
push the
win,
clock enough,
we
somebody
can
can
feel
see
even
your
better
work
about it.
well,
And when it is a
give the
loss,
opportunity, and
we
that's,
can
that's all you
understand
ask,
how
man.
hard it is
There's
on
no
those
guarantees in it.
in an active
When
role
we talk about staying the course,
for the
I
outcome
think
of the
at this
game.
level, you always have to talk about what their end goal is. Number one, obviously in our program.
And
the
so
number
with
one end goal for
so with
everybody
that loss in
is
this
to get
episode,
that degree.
trying to
After that,
cap the
playing
episode
in the
off
ACC
at
for
least
the next
with
step,
some
you have
kind
the
of
opportunity to play NBA or
uplifting
some type of
message
professional
about
ball.
the future of the
we
program, the
have
future of the
those type of
season,
conversations.
the fact that this is airing on like New Year's Eve. I could think of it as like the start of something new.
A lot of successful people in the league, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, whatever, they all have stuck with it. They all have gone through something, and they've all, battled through that adversity.
And so Al's message here about pro athletes on every level battling through adversity, you have that soundbite after a loss. It has more. It has meaning. It has more meaning. You understand that. Oh, these guys aren't gonna like roll over. They're not gonna. This isn't the end. They got more to do. Thank y'all so much for watching today. If you have any comments or questions about what you saw, please feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you enjoy these videos and you want to stay up to date on other directors' commentaries or other videos I do put out, go ahead and hit subscribe, as well as ringing the bell so you get a notification every time I do make something new. And if you want to further support the stuff that I'm making, I would be so humbled if you considered becoming a patron. Becoming a patron comes with all kinds of cool perks, even outside of directors' commentaries. Yeah, but that's about it. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.